Hey, what's going on, everyone? Kyle Henderson, Tony Tsoukalos coming to you from Orlando, Florida. What's going on, Tony?
Hey man, how's it going? Just getting over the holidays.
How were those holidays flights, man? Always a pleasure to jump on a Southwest flight and fly from XO to Orlando.
It's kind of like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're gonna get because you don't have that assigned seat, so everything's kind of random. And I got a window seat, so
See, I'm an aisle guy. I'm a up close to the front aisle guy.
I like the window because you can sleep. I think like if you have somebody super annoying, you just pop it in the earbuds and just kind of like lean over to the side and nobody bothers you. If you're in the aisle, I can't sleep standing or like sitting up. I know you have like the pillow or whatever. I can't do that.
All right, well, enough Southwest Airlines talk. Time to talk about the Verbo Citrus Bowl taking place on the 1st between Alabama taking on Michigan. I like the storylines in this game just because of the two head football coaches. You got Nick Saban taking on Jim Harbaugh. I think when you talk about Alabama, Nick Saban said he wants to get back to, the Bama factor of everything. And what do you think that means in terms of where this team was at the end of the season, losing to Auburn, and where they want to be after the Citrus Bowl?
I think a lot of that has to do with, finishing the season the right way. I think, when he said that there was some concern over whether or not, Alabama was going to have their hearts set on this game. It certainly seems like their head's in the right place, according to it. I know two people, Terrell Lewis and Trayvon Diggs decided not to play in it. But for the most part, it seems like Alabama's got this game. They're in the right mental capacity for it. I think getting back to this Bama standard has been kind of the thing the whole year, is just getting a right mindset. And I think for this game, it means setting up next season. It means getting that first stepping stone to propel them for the right momentum needed for next season.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, the game is on the 1st, so you start off the new year with playing Michigan, and I think a lot of the college football world wants to see this Alabama team come out and perform after that Auburn game. Mac Jones still leading the team at quarterback. How do you feel about Mac Jones and how he did against Auburn? We really never talked about it, you and I personally. How do you think he did in that game, and where have you seen growth from him?
I really thought he kind of, speaking of growth, just grew up in that Auburn game. He made some mistakes, and I think that he, there was times when, he didn't look the best early on. And at the end of that game, I thought he was going to lead them, to victory against a really solid Auburn defense. So I definitely have a lot of confidence in him. It'd be nice to see him, from an Alabama perspective, do the exact same thing against Michigan and kind of prove that he can sustain that. But a good performance against Michigan. You talk about setting up for next season. I think that's huge for him. I think there's going to be a quarterback battle with him and Bryce Young and Talia Tagovailoa. And I think, he has a great audition right now. It's not going to be determined on this game by any means, but it's a good momentum builder for him heading into the spring, which will be a very important spring for him.
So you're saying that it's not going to be determined in this game, and I think I think it could be determined in this game. I think he has an opportunity to go out there and certainly lock up the position battle going into the springtime. And I think obviously he's going to be the top quarterback going into that springtime. But I think Alabama fans still want to see a really good performance from him. I think those two, interceptions against Auburn really stick with people, but I think overall he's been doing a good job. And Nick Saban has said time and time again he's well ahead of the other quarterbacks in the room. Of course, you have Talia Tagovailoa on the roster. You have Bryce Young, the new 5-star that they just signed. You have Paul Tyson there in waiting. So a lot of guys in that quarterback room. It'll be interesting to see what shakes out in the springtime. Coming to you from Orlando, Florida, my name is Kyle Henderson. He's Tony Tsoukalos. Nice setup in Orlando. This Roslyn Hotel on International Boulevard, treating the media well. I'm trying to trying to still wrap my head around Alabama not in the playoffs. Do you think that has affected this program in any way, shape, or form?
Well, obviously they're not playing for a title, so that's a huge effect. But I think that players are bummed and kind of they're ticked off, and they might play with a chip on their shoulder. But I really do think that this game is kind of resetting the ship, rewriting the ship, and kind of like, not to be corny and go on what we just talked about with Nick Saban, but getting back to that being Alabama again. I don't know if the Bama factor sounds so cliche, but just being Alabama again, dominating a team that you have the ability to dominate. I think I'm not expecting them to shut out Michigan's offense, or I don't think this defense is just going to totally change. But a good, solid performance from the defense after giving up, I think, like 94 points combined to LSU and Auburn. I think a solid showing from the defense would go a long way towards building momentum for that as well, and just kind of for the guys that are returning next year, have that this is what we can be as a team.
You talk about the defensive struggles that this team has faced this year. How much of that, in your opinion, is on Pete Golding, and how much of that is on the fact that this team had so many freshmen and dealt with some very serious injuries at the beginning of the season?
It's really hard to deal with the freshmen at inside linebacker. I think probably, hindsight 2020, I'm sure you could pick out moments where Pete Golding could have had better setups, and I don't know the behind the scenes of like what went on. There were times when maybe they didn't look like they were set up the best, but in the end, it's also a very young defense that was young at crucial spots. You had 2 freshmen on the defensive line and 2 freshmen at inside linebacker. That's really tough to overcome. If you're looking at up the middle, you even had out of the dime package, you had Jordan Battle. So you had, at times, freshmen completely up your middle, because you had DJ Dale at defensive tackle, Christian Harris and Shane Lee at linebacker, and Jordan Battle as one of your safeties out of certain packages. That's really hard to overcome, and some of those players did really well. I'm not downing them. It's just that's a lot of youth at a very important part of your defense, and no matter how good your coaching is, I think you're bound to struggle. Now, could he have done better? Probably. I mean, 94, points. That's a lot in 2 games, no matter who you're playing. And Alabama should never do that. With the talent they have on their roster, they should never do that. But he definitely did not have an easy job this season. And I think maybe he as in Pete Golding, gets a little bit too harsh a criticism, or has gotten a little bit too harsh a criticism.
Yeah, I would probably agree with that. I think with the amount of freshmen and the injuries, especially the injury to Dylan Moses, I mean, that's the equivalent of losing 2 at the beginning of the season on the defensive side, in my opinion, in terms of just the coach on the field, so to speak. So I think, with the freshmen playing, I think a lot of the defensive woes came from that, but I think it's also going to bode well for Alabama's defense going forward, just because these guys are getting a lot of experience playing this particular season. Tua Tagovailoa hobbling off the airplane yesterday. Everyone wants to talk about Tua. In your opinion, does he leave for the NFL draft, or do you think he makes some sort of appearance, or does he even come back for the 2020 season? What's your assessment on that?
I mean, I don't know what he's thinking, and he has until January 20th to make that decision. But I don't personally. If I'm Tua, I don't come back. I think that he's still going to be a first-round pick. I think he'll end up still being a high first-round pick. But then again, I'm not hearing the things, and sometimes, like Nick Saban said, these mock drafts aren't right. And maybe there are NFL teams that are more concerned about Tua and his durability after the hip injury. So if that's the case and he wants to come back and try to be a top-end first-round pick, then that makes sense if that's what he's hearing. I think it really depends on what he's hearing. From what I know, which is admittedly not a lot, I would say he's crazy for coming back. I think you take the money and you've earned it, and go be an NFL player. That's what your dream has always been. But I don't hear those conversations, so I think that's really a decision for him.
My answer is a lot shorter. I think absolutely he leaves to the NFL draft. I mean, he's always talking about money on the table, leaving money on the table. And I think, how can you leave money on the table? I think, depending on his health status going in, I think he's absolutely a top, pick in the NFL draft. Top meaning, in the first round, 1 through 15. I still think that he's displayed enough of his skill set to really flourish in the NFL. Obviously not probably right away, but I think in time. So just like there's been many reports, it would be projected that he would go in the NFL behind a veteran quarterback. I think that makes perfect sense. So take the money, run with it. And because I think in the downside, if he comes back for the 2020 season, who knows if he can even play? Who knows about his mobility? But if he gets hurt one time, his fingernail falls off, something like that, I think his draft stock plummets just because everyone will point to the fact that this guy is so injury-plagued throughout his career. I posted a nugget on BamaInsider.com the other day. I heard that Henry Ruggs will be coming back for the 2020 season. I can't absolutely confirm it, but, I mean, that's what I've been told by some pretty good sources, and that would be monumental for Alabama's offense. Obviously, there's a lot of guys returning. Still kind of hearing those same rumblings on Devontae Smith, which I think would be monumental for Alabama's offense. Then again, will Devontae Smith come back and really improve his draft stock? I guess that's hard to say. I mean, the season that he had this year with 1,300 yards receiving would be hard to duplicate in 2020. But I think when you look at the receiving core for next season, I mean, wow, Henry Ruggs, Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle.
Borderline the same. You just take out Jerry Jeudy, and then you should have an emergence of a player like John Mechie the third, or Tyrell Shavers, or somebody like Slade Bolden, or somebody like that should be getting better as well. So you're going to lose a very quality receiver in Jerry Jeudy, but I mean, especially if you have those two guys coming back, and you saw what Waddle can do in the Iron Bowl, you're not going to lose anything on the receiving core. I mean, it's hard to say that when you lose a guy like Jerry Jeudy, but you had so much talent, and if those two guys, Devontae Smith and Henry Ruggs III, come back, I mean, you won't see a drop-off. I'm telling you right now, you won't. I mean, you might see, it's hard with Jerry Jeudy, and they'll be missing him in terms of just what he can do, but at the same time, there's 3 first-rounders still, in my opinion, in those 3, in Jalen Waddle, Henry Ruggs, and Devontae Smith, and so they have capable passers to throw to. I wonder if maybe I think there's been some speculation that the fact that those players are coming back, is that a sign that Tua might come back? Is that part of the reason? Because why would, if you look at it, why would a Henry Ruggs come back? When you really break it down, he's a guy that's gonna kill it in the combine, and that's one of the ones that if you look at him, I don't necessarily know I understand that decision if we're making those decisions, but in his case, I think one of the plus sides to that, and I'm not sure how much it means to him, but you look at Henry Ruggs' numbers, you look at Devontae Smith's numbers, they could break some school records next season with especially with touchdown receptions. I'm not sure they'll catch all of Amari Cooper's receiving records, but whoever if assuming they stay, either one of those could go down as the best receiver in Alabama history, statistically at least.
Yeah, I think all those guys, I mean, if those two guys come back, I mean, the receiving core will probably be just as equal, if not better, next season, which is like incredible to think of. Is Jalen Waddle the best football player on this team? I certainly think he is.
The best football, like
right now, like straight up, just like the most valuable player on this offense.
Oh no! I mean, I think on this current offense, I'd still go with Jerry Jeudy or
more than Jalen Waddle.
Yeah, just in terms of, I think, he's been doubled and stuff like that, and I think if you still go by talent, I think Jerry Jeudy is probably the most talented player on the team. I mean, same with Devontae Smith. I think they're a little bit more polished, but maybe most electric for Jalen Waddle. He's definitely probably the most fun to watch too, but yeah, I think I'd take Jerry over just as a pure receiver.
I think pure receiver, absolutely Jerry Jeudy, but I think overall, like elite talent, best player on the team, trending upward at the right time, man on fire, I think Jalen Waddle is like your guy. I think he's just, I mean, he needs the football as much as possible, and I think what he did against Auburn was phenomenal. I can't even imagine if he had 20 touches a game in some sort of capacity, 12 receptions and different type of kick returns.
Those jet sweeps.
He's unbelievable. I mean, and it's like all these guys have elite talent, but Jalen Waddle has that other factor, and it's hard because we're like debating between Jerry Jeudy and Jalen Waddle, but like Jalen Waddle is just a man on fire right now. I mean, it's really amazing to see his growth towards the later part of the season. You wrote about Najee Harris recently. He's a guy that certainly has to go to the draft, or do you think he comes back? I think we've talked about this before. We both think he's out of here.
It's weird with running backs because I think you could look at Najee Harris and say I don't think he's going to be a top 2-round pick. I think he's probably somewhere in the 3rd round. But as a running back, what more is he going to prove? And I'm not sure if coming back is going to make him a top 2 pick. And it's not even a diss on Najee Harris's talent or anything like that. I mean, look at what it did with Damian Harris. Did it really? He's a guy that really wanted to come back, so it was good that he came back. But is Najee a guy that really wants to come back? I don't know. And I don't think it will make that much of a difference. It didn't really make that much of a difference for Damian to come back. I think you only have a certain lifespan as a running back. Unless Najee just super wants to come back to Alabama, I think the best play is probably to go and get that money. I think the money's going to be very comparable whether he goes out this year or next year, and it's just an extra year of top elite status. I think he's proven to NFL scouts that he can do everything. I don't think he needs another season of that. I mean, the last half of the season he's been on fire. He's been the Najee Harris. You kind of have to wait for it. It's weird, but by the end of his career at Alabama, he was definitely as advertised, that number 1 elite back. And really Alabama in recent games has kind of turned to him as their number 1 back instead of kind of spreading the ball out. But he's proven that he can be a really good back, and I think he's going to do well in the NFL. And I just think that he's proven all that he has to prove.
We are coming to you from Orlando, Florida at the Verbo Citrus Bowl. We'll have coverage all these, I was going to say all this week, but we're already kind of towards the later part of the week. These next few days on BamaInsider.com. I'll post the exact schedule in the comment box, so be sure and check that out. And, of course, everything back on BamaInsider.com. We're still running the Nike promo. You can get $75 to Nike.com as well as 25% off your subscription. We also have a free 30-day promo code at BamaInsider.com. And read the stat off. Tony's pointing the stat to me.
Oh, I was just back to Najee Harris.
Still on that Najee.
Well, right, yeah. I was just going to say one of the interesting things I wrote about this week was one matchup I'm looking forward to is Michigan ranks number 10 in the nation, allowing opposing rushers just 3.03 yards per carry, which is really good. But when you look at the 3 times they faced top 50 rushers, that number has skyrocketed to 6.66 yards per carry. They've been gashed by J.K. Dobbins and Jonathan Taylor for 200 yards apiece. Najee Harris, top 50 back. It'd be interesting to see if he keeps that trend. Because on paper, Michigan's a really good run defense, but will they be able to stop Najee Harris? I think that's one of the more interesting aspects of this matchup for me.
We'll have tons of coverage, so be sure and go read Tony's story on BamaInsider.com. Check out all of our stories. We're also going to be at the Under Armour All-American game. That's something that we didn't even talk about. We're going to try to make a couple practices there. I think there's like 6 or 7 Alabama signees that'll be in attendance. I believe Chris Boswell as well as Ty Jones-Bell. So plenty of coverage all these next few days on BamaInsider.com. Be sure and follow all of our coverage. Lastly, Tony, let's end on this. Michigan beats Alabama if
Alabama decides not to show up mentally. I think I think if Alabama treats this game like it's nothing, like it's not important, I think any team can beat anyone. You've seen that happen in the Sugar Bowl against Oklahoma in 2013. So if Alabama's head's on the right way, I don't see it losing. I think they're a more talented team. I think this Michigan team's good. I don't think it's as good as Alabama. I think they should win pretty handily by multiple scores. But if they don't come out to play, I think this Michigan team is definitely good enough to beat them if they're not all there.
Yeah, I would agree with that assessment. I think mentally for this team, I think where we've seen this team mentally they've took this loss as a positive. They always talk about doing something right after a loss, and Nick Saban has done a good job, at least what it seems like these last couple of weeks, having this team prepared. Also, there's no coaching transitions. All these coaches have finally stayed on, right? I mean,
that's a weird thing.
Yeah, right, because usually we're writing about, a new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator, but in this particular case, you have Sarkisian, you have Golding, the whole host of all the coaches, and I thought it was interesting during Alabama's photo sessions, they kept on showing. They would throw in an assistant coach in every single like media photo. Yeah, they'd be like, here's Steve Sarkisian, here's Pete Golding, and look in the back, Charles Kelly, Brian Baker. So and they haven't been doing that. So I think that was like a subtle message to be like, hey, all these coaches are in place.
I think that'll be huge next year. I think that's one thing that, you know, kind of gets overlooked this season is just the constant transition with these kids and with how young some of this team was. I think not having that stability of coaching, I think that is highlighted more when you have a young team. So I think the team getting older and the coaching kind of staying stable.
The coaches being more than 10 months.
Exactly. The stability on this team, both in terms of experience from the players and from the coaching staff being experienced with being at Alabama, I think will be a huge factor next season.
All right. Well, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. All the coverage back at BamaInsider.com. For Tony Tuscaloosa, Kyle Henderson, all the coverage back at BamaInsider.com. Check out our recruiting coverage, too. Andrew Bone, you guys, you had a big month in December. Tons of recruiting coverage with the new signing day pushed up to December 18th. Coming to you again from Orlando, Florida. Kyle Henderson, Tony Tuscaloosa. Catch you guys soon on BamaInsider.com.